some of these around his ankles.
He probably does.
Yeah. Oh, well, he like that too.
Like I said, I know a lot of people know your grandparents, Chris, and they know the stories from the the movies and all that other stuff. But tell us about yourself. Like what are you all about, and what's the foundation all about? Yeah, leave me out. It's been trying to leave me out of this whole show.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's been crazy. So yeah, everybody, just so you all know tonight, Dana is going to actually kind of run the show. Well, good evening, everybody.
Hello.
We have a few special surprises tonight. We have Jerry is going to co-host with us. Everybody knows Jerry is a member of Boo Productions as well. And our guest is Bill. Now, you're going to have to help me with the last name. I grew up in a Polish neighborhood, but I'm not sure if it's Polish. Is it Konkolesky?
Oh, my gosh. Perfect. You nailed it.
Yes. I've got
We worked together on that one. Yeah.
So people butcher the heck out of it. You guys, everybody out there, you guys wanted a show about UFOs and aliens and things like that. So we reached out to Adam, and Adam said that, Bill, you were the resident expert on all things, I guess, spatial. So you're the director for the Michigan MUFON, correct?
Correct. Yeah, the Michigan chapter of the Mutual UFO Network.
Yep. And you've also authored a couple books.
Yep.
Looks like Experiencer 1 and 2.
These two books.
Cool.
Yep.
So that's good. What I guess briefly run down the books real quick. Like what are they about? Like experiences, stories, or are they, what's the books all about?
Okay. So I often like to say that UFOs took an interest in me before I took an interest in them. And so my very earliest memory in life, age 2, is of a little gray guy coming to my crib. And I had experiences at age 4, 7, 9, 10, tons in my teen years, several in my 20s, and then it started to taper off a little bit, never completely went away. And so in 1993, I went to MUFON to tell them about some of the things that had happened in my life, to hopefully explore some of them, which I had the great opportunity to do with Shirley Coyne, the state director at the time, who was she was able to do hypnotic regressions. And so I had about a half a dozen sessions with her, and I took great notes. And so at one point, I thought, well, I'd like to write this all down in some sort of format, at least for myself, that I would be able to look back and read these and have the stories there for myself of these events that happened to me. And then when it got to a point where like, oh my gosh, I could do a book if I really wanted to. Yeah. And it's a big step to put yourself out on the, in public with accounts like this, but right. I did it. And the two books that I have, Experiencer, Raised in Two Worlds, my first book, is about my encounters up to age 20, roughly. Okay. And then Experiencer's Two Worlds Collide is for my experiences in my early 20s, maybe about up to 25. The point of each of these books, and there is a point to each of them. The first book, there have been a lot of books up to that point that this came out that dealt with how children go through abductions as a child and what it means to them and how it affects them. And I saw a lot of books saying this is what happens when we investigated a child who had these types of things, or this is what happened when we talked to an adult who remembered these things as a child. But for me, I had so many things happen when I was young. I thought, well, a firsthand perspective would help, the conversation, certainly. So that's what the point of that book is. And the book about my early 20s deals with a facet of the phenomena that's not often described, which is, when people have abduction scenarios happen to them, it's not just a one and done type of thing. A lot of people who have these things have them recurring throughout their life. And an odd thing starts to happen is that the entities doing the abductions and orchestrating these encounters, they take a very deep interest in people's personal lives, where they live, where they work, who they select as their partner, their mate.
Yeah.
And so those stories aren't easy to tell in just short bites.
Right. Right.
You need to sort of patiently unpackage that aspect of it, and that's the part that's the focus of the second book.
I know Jerry's going to have quite a few questions because Jerry, like, I'm going to be honest with you, I definitely deal more with the ghosts and the spirits and all that stuff. So, like, this whole world of UFO things are, it's fairly new to us. Jerry is a lot more, I guess, knowledgeable on the topic than I am, and Dana is. So, but like, okay, so like, I had a couple questions when you were describing your book. So, why do you think? Is it a very common occurrence that it happens with children, and why do you think they have encounters with kids?
I think for a couple reasons. One is that they're interested in the stages of our life. They're interested in family lines, intergenerational things. They're really into our biology, and for them to not start at the childhood level, they're missing a lot of data that would come in by watching somebody go through their lives. Another thing is on a psychological level, anybody that I know that's had their first remembered encounter as an adult, it's been hugely traumatic for them. And and different people takes it longer to sort of come to peace, if that's even possible with that type of thing. But when you started off with a child, like for example, my earliest memory in life is a contact experience, and my experiences through childhood and early adulthood mean that this has always been part of my life. This is normal. So I think it's just a matter of the older that the older the individual that starts this process of dealing with it, it's a lot more difficult.
Is it maybe too because children tend to have, like, because there's a lot of like paranormal sightings, ghost sightings, and things like that with kids. It's because they've not been told no yet. You know what I mean? They're definitely more open-minded than adults are, because I think a lot of times kids will see things that we don't see because as a kid you're told that no, that didn't happen, no, it didn't happen, no, it didn't happen. So eventually you convince yourself that it didn't happen. And I just wonder if maybe that's why they go after kids. Jerry, do you got any questions about that?
No, I think this is it's a good segue, Bill, into one of my current event topics I wanted to bring up with you, which is, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it was a mass experience by children in Zimbabwe. It's the Ariel phenomenon, and I think there's a movie, I think, on Coast to Coast earlier this week. I think Bill Knapp had the person who's creating that movie, but I was wondering if you were familiar with. I mean, it's a pretty mass school, like the entire school, elementary kids basically saw a UFO arrive, land. Two entities came out. There was telepathic communication allegedly between them, and I think obviously in Zimbabwe it's very remote at that time in 1994, I think it was, but the kids' stories were all consistent. I mean, if these kids were lying, they really put together an amazing lie where everyone was coordinated, and that's probably not. I think it lends to the credibility of the story. I don't know if you're familiar with that event or not.
Oh yeah, very familiar. Yep. And I think that we're lucky within the UFO community that for a few things. One is, at the time, there was a prominent ufologist within the continent of Africa, Cynthia Hind, and also that John Mack, who visited the school, he had the funds, the means to be able to do so, to take a trip like that and document it as best as possible. The other great benefit we have is that so many of the children who had this experience still are open to talking about it. So we have the benefit of adults now coming out and saying, yes, this wasn't just some game we played as children. This actually happened. And to show that, in the 20 years, nearly 30 years, really, since that event, that the stories have remained, intact. There hasn't been anybody that broke off and said, no, we actually just made that up, or they started remembering it so wildly different when so many years after the fact that you wonder, what the actual event was all about. Yeah, but yeah, all sorts of school children out on the playground. Interestingly, the adults were not there for the sighting, but the drawings that the children did, the way that their stories mesh, their level of emotion when it came to it. Yeah, this was not one or two children. This was, um, I think I can't remember the number offhand. It might have been 63. It may be even been more. I don't remember.
Yeah, it was a large group. Yeah, there's we can link up the link to the website for that movie. And like I said, George Knapp had the person who was in charge of the production, who was basically went around the world tracking down these kids because they're all over they're all over the world. They're living in Germany, they're living in different parts of the world. So it sounds like he spent a lot of time tracking them down, talking to them again. Some of them have had experiences since, as you mentioned. Sometimes it's a lifetime experience where it's not just a one and done, right? A lot of the people who have those types of experiences they have additional experiences as well. But yeah, I think it was over 60 children. Yeah, 1994. So we can link back to that, Jeff. We can provide a link to that website.
I'll let you do that because that's why we have Jerry on. No,
well, I mean, and just to be clear, my credentials in Jeff's world is just that I listen to Coast to Coast a little bit more than he does. Yeah, so I wouldn't say that I'm a UFO expert or anything, but I definitely pay attention to it. Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing for me is even when you're watching some of the television shows, when you see a video of a ghost, you can see the first thing I think of is that could easily be faked. I know exactly how that could be faked and over again. But some of this aerial phenomenon and, UFO, UAP, whatever we want to call it, some of it's amazing and it's hard to refute. Some of this evidence is, and I'm assuming with MUFON, is that a lot of what you all do there? You try to collect the people who are reporting such things and then try to determine if there's consistency between different people reporting the same thing. And what's a typical MUFON investigation look like?
Okay, so in Michigan, we get about 200 sightings a year, which puts us on the high end of states that have reports come in.
Now, MUFON is that 200 like legit that you guys have said are legit sightings, or
no.
Okay.
No, I'm getting into that. So the first of all, MUFONs besides the United States, we're in over 40 countries. We have over 4,000 members, and each of the chapters, we have several localized chapters. In this case, in the United States, of course, it's by state. And these 200 sightings that we get in roughly a year, about 95% of them can be identified by our investigators on any given year. And so in a case where Michigan has, we'll say, 200 sightings a year, then that means that, out of these, 190 are going to be identified by us. And then we have 10 that we have no idea what they are. Right. And that's, the exciting stuff there.
Yeah. So what, in relation then to Ohio, do you know any kind of numbers that Ohio gets as far as sightings and things like that?
Not offhand. I know Michigan tends to, the big ones tend to be California, Texas, off of New York, and Pennsylvania is generally up there, and Michigan as well. Other states, their numbers, vary possibly by year, but for some reason, Michigan keeps up with the big states like Texas and California.
Is it a certain part of Michigan that sees more, or is it just scattered throughout the state?
Okay, so that's a great question. So first of all, UFO sightings occur all year. There isn't like a season where we have more UFO sightings. We might get an extra sighting on the 4th of July, but otherwise, when you take one of the things we can do with our software is say, show me the last 100 sightings in the state, and what you always get is a population map. So that shows that it's happening everywhere, and wherever there's more people, more people means,
Yeah, right.
more sightings in that area. So, and then you do that in any state or province or what have you, and that's what you always get. Yeah, it's not some specific geographic area of the state that's favored for reasons that can't be explained. It's
Okay.
like, oh, look at all these sightings in Detroit. Of course, that's
Yeah.
where there's a lot of people.
So because you said like they're mostly like on the southern or not southern, the western part of the country, but like is it possible just because of the regions? Because like we have warm and cold weather, so is it possible like because they want to catch like what we have here, and then like because Texas is hotter than hot and humidity. Been there, that's horrible. And then California is kind of one of those mediocre. So do you think that's possible? So they get just like a different perspective from the different like those, because I mean
Like
Michigan and
related.
Yeah, it's not really that complicated. These are just big states with large populations,
Okay.
and so just by the numbers of the number of people that live there, that means more sightings.
We got a couple questions from viewers. Kelly wants to know, why do you think Michigan has so many?
Now that is a good one. We maybe are above the trend, based upon our size and population. And I don't know. A lot of people, when they start their gears running, like maybe it's something to do with the lakes, and it could be something to do with the lakes. However, we don't tend to see a larger number of sightings around lakes. I remember it was 2014. It was our record year. We had 412 sightings reported.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so and the reason for that, I'll just say up front, was Chinese lanterns or sky lanterns.
Yeah.
That was a big trend at the time, and
Yep.
people didn't know what they were, and so there you go. But I remember somebody asked, is it something around the lake? They wanted to know, was there any evidence for there being a UFO base under Lake Michigan?
Okay.
So I said, okay, I'll tell you what, I'll look through our big year that we just had and tell you how many sightings that we had either over the lake or even along the coast of the lake. And I came back with exactly 4 sightings out of the 412 sightings. And so when I told the individual, I said, look, I came up with 4. And they're like, there are 4 sightings by the lake? There's got to be a base under the water there for sure. And I'm like, Lake Michigan, if you include, of course, the UP, really borders half of the state.
Yep.
And for there to be so few, I'm like, no, that's not compelling. That's less than 1%. And I said, if you're looking for a body of water to look for a UFO base based upon the number of sightings, looking under the Detroit River.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say, is that like it's not a big population center around the lakes. Granted in Detroit it is, but like there's no Detroit over by by Lake Michigan. But how many have you guys ever done any kind of studies on statistics? Like, so if you get one report, how many go unreported of the same sighting or something like that? You know what I mean? Because like, if I went out tonight and saw something up in the sky that I'm like, oh God, what the hell is that? Up until today, I wouldn't have even known who to report it to.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, if I could just have a final comment on the last part, and then I'll answer that question. Certainly the West Michigan area, the Grand Rapids, Grand Haven, Muskegon, Holland area, that's not a small population area. That is a large population area, and still we got smallish numbers. But sorry, could you rephrase the question? I feel like I'm on a game show.
No, that's all right. Actually, this is more relevant to what we're talking about. Like, so do you follow any stats from like Chicago?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's by Lake Michigan. Do they have a lot of reports that coincide with the reports that you guys receive?
Mm-hmm. I don't know if anybody's interested in Chicago. I see a comment.
I'm not. No.
Well, I guess I think that.
Yeah. But yes. Obviously, yeah, Chicago gets a large number, and they have a lot of great historical sightings at Tinley Park. The O'Hare Airport sighting. There's a lot, of big sightings that Illinois has in the Chicago area.
Okay.
So what type of, you said 95% are pretty much identified. What's a common misreported, event? So
That kind of leads into what
Okay.
Don's asking. It says,
Yeah.
in the ghost hunting community, we have hang on, I'll put it up here. We have the orb controversy, which people love to argue about orbs. Trust me, don't even bring them up in any ghost hunting group. What, if any, controversy is there among the UFO community?
Okay, well, orbs, depending upon who's viewing them and their perception of them and their history of experiences, that's something that's also shared by the UFO community. People report orbs to MUFON, because, in their minds, depending on who it is, they're tiny UFOs. They're unidentified flying objects or lights, and people who have UFO events will a lot of times have orb sightings too. So that is definitely a shared thing that we get a lot of reports on. In terms of misidentifications, there are some big ones that have come along in the last decade. I mentioned Chinese lanterns, and for that's a big one because they're silent. And when people see them flickering, they say, "Oh, it was strobing."
Yep.
If you let up like 3 of them, people say, "Look, it's a triangle," because
Yep.
their mind connects the dots, and so they'll take pictures and videos and say, they've got the smoking gun or whatever. So
Yeah.
that's been kind of a challenge for us. Drones have some interesting lights and flight characteristics, and sometimes if people see them and don't have an idea of their distance, that can lead. And that was another one that we actually got a bump from in 2015. But a recent one that we got over the last couple of years was Starlink satellites. Elon Musk's project to have worldwide internet. And so these satellites, they launch in a chain. And when people see them, if you go to YouTube and look up Starlink satellites, you can see what they look like and how mysterious they look, and that they do in fact look like a squadron of UFOs flying by. And even very recently, within the past few weeks, there was a lot of hullabaloo about UFOs, and it would turn out to be Starlink satellites. So in 2020, for a while there, more than half of the reported sightings that we got in were Starlink satellites. It was that many reports coming in. And so I often joke that while Elon Musk was 2021 Time Man of the Year or Person of the Year, he was MUFON 2020 Person of the Year because of all those darn satellites that.
I wonder if that's what I saw, because there was one night where, and it would have been in Lower Michigan because we live right on the border, and it was north of us. But there was a night when I saw these 3. It looked triangular, and it just looked weird, and I wonder if maybe that was it because it was 2019, maybe 2020. I mean, who knows what it was? It was a weird formation, but it's like, okay, I thought it was odd, but I didn't think immediately, okay, that's for sure a UFO. You know what I mean?
The first question you want to ask is that, can you see the stars in the center of this formation? Yeah. If you could still see the sky, it's likely multiple objects, not a single object.
Yeah.
And then it comes to a matter of, okay, so how did you first spot it? How did it disappear? Was it a steady flight? Or did it at some point do something unexpected, like make a right turn?
It seemed like it was just kind of, I don't want to say hovering, but moving very, very slow. But it was far away too, so I don't know. It could have been.
And I know, where we live now, I grew up in this area, and even I remember as a kid, we would see stuff, and people would always tell you you're imagining, but it would be stuff that's like it wouldn't make sense. So I mean, and it's because we're right on that Michigan line, but on Lake Erie and Maumee and Ottawa River. So, but it would always be, you would see it because I mean, we don't have as many city lights where we're at, so you would get to see it, but we would have that all the time, and everybody would try to explain it like it's something else. So
Jerry, you probably got another question, don't you?
Oh yeah, we'll piggyback on what we were already talking about. So we have 95%. You said 95% are usually just, they're proven to be something that is identifiable. So what does MUFON typically do with the other 5%? So do you send people out to talk to people, or I mean, how far along do you guys go as far as investigating? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. There was a question about the process. So basically, what happens, most of the time, somebody will start off the process by filling out a report form at our website. They go to MUFON.com, they fill out the UFO report form, and then that goes to the chief investigator of whatever state. And in our case, Daniel Snow, our chief investigator, chooses to either investigate the sighting himself, or he will pass it on to one of our generally half dozen of active investigators at any given time. And then those investigators will reach out to the witness either by email or phone and have a discussion about the sighting to complete the form together. And then at that point, if there's any reason to go to the person's home, to go on location, then, certainly that's an option. Many times, though, if it's something that somebody saw the night before, they said, oh, I saw this light do a 90-degree turn. Well, unless it's going to do it again tonight, there's no real reason to go out on location. And of course, we have all the fancy apps about flight paths and the night sky. And, technology is great for a lot of quick checks on things and to see if anything that's an easy explanation matches the behavior of whatever it is that the witness saw.
We as paranormal investigators, we do a lot of our questioning, before we decide to take on a case has to do with people's personal information, like, psych meds. Do you watch ghost shows, all that kind of stuff? Do you guys have any kind of questioning like that you ask of people that are, filling reports with you guys?
It's not codified into the actual report form, but I always ask those questions, when I'm talking to somebody. And I think it's tacky to lead in with that sort of a thing, because it almost sounds like, okay, I doubt you.
Yep, I doubt you before you even talk. Yep, I get it. Yep, but we work it in our questions. We first ask about experiences and blah blah blah. Yeah, we don't lead out with hey, what kind of meds are you on? We don't do that. But but it is important, at least in the ghost community, that those questions need to be asked, because a lot of those meds can really affect what you see. So that's why I asked you that.
Yeah, on a related note, I'm not sure if you watched the congressional hearings a couple days ago, but they asked Moultrie, like, I understand you're a science fiction fan.
Yeah,
and he goes, I go to the conventions, I don't necessarily dress up. And then one guy goes, you don't necessarily dress up, but
that was let's go ahead and jump into that. What's your opinion on that? Because I listened to those today, and in my opinion, that was just like a fat nothing burger. Like that was.
Yeah, it's a lot of theater. I'm of two minds about it. One is it was awkward and ill-educated, but on the other hand, anytime that this topic gets that level of attention, it's a good thing, regardless of how it goes. And that's about all I can say about the latter. But I can certainly pick it apart for quite some time. But the one thing that got me the most was how unaware the Bray and Moultrie were about the history of the UFO phenomena. Things that were brought up, like, for example, they were unaware of the Malmstrom Air Force Base incursion, where a UFO flew over a base and all the nukes switched off. That's not hearsay. That's not a wild story. That's factual. That happened. And they seem to be unaware of that. They were also unaware of Project Sign and Project Grudge, the Air Force's UFO investigation efforts prior to Project Blue Book. When Moultrie was asked if there were any projects prior to Blue Book, his response was no. And well, I don't know. I think there was something to do with Roswell or something like that, he said. And the Admiral Wilson memo, the former director of intelligence, this is on, on record. This has happened. This is not made up. He
Right.
asked to be read into some of the black budget experiments that were going on, from the aerospace part of the black budget, and they said that he did not have a need to know. And so that's kind of a big deal, that this hot shot within the intelligence community, about as high up as you can go, and
Yeah.
he doesn't have the clearance to look into the black budget aerospace developments.
Right.
So that's interesting. And these guys were unaware of that. They just seem to not know. And I have a couple thoughts about that. One is, now, if they did know about all of this stuff, and they were just saying, no, I don't know anything about it. That's a possibility, I guess, even though they really
Yeah.
didn't seem to know anything about it. But if they did claim to know about, say, the Malmstrom Air Force Base incursion, then they would be sort of held accountable. They'd be liable for what is being done with that information. They would say, I admit to knowing all of this stuff is a thing. So now, then you must have some official governmental perspective on these things. But by them saying, I don't know about that, I don't know
Yeah.
about that, means that they're not held culpable for those events and whatever the government is doing or has done about them. Though it certainly is problematic also if they don't know.
Yeah.
I guess that's a lose-lose there.
Yeah,
Um,
I think congressional hearings in general tend to be, a lot of people get up there and you can't wait for them to get up there, and it seems to be, well, I don't know. That's in all topics, and I think that was kind of the same thing too.
Mhm. Yeah, and there were some, Gallagher had some great questions. I appreciate Carson brought up the Mutual UFO Network. I thought not all the people asking questions were asking the best and right questions, but some were. And
Yeah.
they, a lot of times they, when pressed about specifics, Bray and Moultrie said, okay, let's talk about that in the closed session.
Yeah.
And so maybe in the closed session, things got a little bit more interesting. They, I'll say this. Okay. From the MUFON perspective, we get a lot of good cell phone pictures and videos in. There's always that thing like, how come, everybody's got a phone, but nobody gets good pictures or videos? Well, they exist. And a lot of them aren't shared publicly. It requires a witness to sign a form of release and everything. So we can't just display them out to the public. But the one thing, here is that, we have so many good pictures and videos. The stuff that they showed during the hearing,
Yeah.
that blip that shot past the airplane window,
Yep.
it's not a bad video, but
No.
they have much
No.
better things. That, if anything, to me demonstrated that they very intentionally selected almost probably the worst video that
Yeah,
they
they're
ever-
controlling what's being released,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
They're controlling what they're sharing.
Why
Mhm.
do you
Yeah.
think that, okay, so I guess from my perspective is, why do you think they're so intent on hiding things? It really, it's, so many people have encounters and so many people believe and so many people see. Why are they, they don't need to hide it, I don't think.
Well, starting off, the government hides what it knows about everything.
Yeah.
It's not just UFOs; it's the budget. It's everything the government is going to, not show its full hand. And this one, this is huge, right? This is going to
Yeah.
change everything. If the United States government says that, where this seems to be leading, that there is evidence of life elsewhere visiting
Yeah.
here, and then people will be deeply hungry about that subject and things that are happening in their day-to-day lives, like people's religions, what they do with their lives. This is a big thing. This is like, one of those two big questions. What happens to us after we die, and is there
Yeah.
life out, intelligent life out there?
Yep.
But so I mean, this is a game changer, and so that's a lot to bite to just say, yes, this exists. We don't know a lot about it. What we do know, we're not going to tell you.
Yeah.
As you were, go on with your
it
life.
was a big step that that acknowledgement has been made, in my opinion. So, Jerry, did you have any questions about that?
Well, I think they do something similar, Bill, with the Pentagon released a bunch of videos sometime last year too.
I'm gonna let you guys take it for 1 second.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that was also theater as well, because if you notice, it was the Navy's videos, and it was, here's some sightings out over the Atlantic, here's some sightings out over the Pacific. Nothing on land, nothing near a population center. It was just a way to sort of tease the public, like, what do you think about this? In an area that's not directly over your house. It's out over the ocean. It's not even out over the United States. And it was a very intentional sort of drip feed. I think that incrementally, year by year, they're going to share more videos. Some of them are going to be videos over land, and then they'll gauge how that does, and they'll release a little bit more and a little bit more, because I think people on a grassroots level are catching such good videos and photos that the evidence is mounting. I think, especially due to the internet, the conversation on the topic has blossomed outside the giggle factor, with science finding habitable worlds on a persistent basis. We had the Hubble and Kepler, now the Webb telescopes. Everything is moving in the direction of acceptance of the possibility of life out there, and possibly even proof of that happening. And so the government doesn't want to get caught with its pants down and say, suddenly if a UFO just lands on the White House lawn, as they would say, they don't want to be in a position of people saying, you knew about this, didn't you? And because of course they do know things. And so this way, by slowly easing through these, the press conference and release of information last year, and these random videos, this way, in say like 10 years, when the government decides to really just say, yeah, we know a lot about this, then it'll be like, and we also have been telling you this for several years. So they're going to be like, yeah, we were talking about this for a long time. Weren't you listening? We're on your side. So I think that's the whole point of a lot of these hearings and these release of videos. They're not a lot, but they're enough to say that the government is sharing information, so nobody riots when full disclosure comes.
Yeah, it's almost like they feel that the public, like you said, they're not capable of handling the information that that may be presented. And I think too, the elected officials are probably the ones that are the last to know, right? It's the whole
Why tell somebody who's going to be around for a couple of years?
Yep, the whole permanent employees that never have to get elected, they always seem to be there. They're the ones that know everything, and then it's the politicians that are probably the ones that are second to last to know, before the public. In most cases, I would imagine.
Yeah, and sort of a nice little fun fact about this press conference is the last open congressional hearing on UFOs was because of the sightings here in southeastern Michigan back in 1966. People were seeing things. The Project Blue Book sent their chief scientific advisor, J. Allen Hynek, who said, maybe this is marsh gas or swamp gas, what some people are seeing. And so a lot of people got upset with the government and military. And of course, when people get upset with the government, what do? They write their congressman. And Gerald Ford was a congressman at the time, and he got a lot of calls and letters. And so to support his constituents, he said to Congress, hey, you should have a hearing on this. And they did. And April 5th, 1966, they had a big hearing. J. Allen Hynek, who was embarrassed at this point about saying that it was swamp gas, said, hey, if you don't like what the military or the government has to say, you should start, you should have a civilian group look at this. And the Air Force said, that's a great idea. We'll put that civilian group together, which they did. And so the University of Colorado audited Project Blue Book, did their own sort of study, came up with the conclusion that there wasn't anything to this UFO phenomena. And then the Air Force said, well, if they don't think there's anything to it, and we've been looking at this, now for several years. So after 17 years, 12,000 plus sightings that Project Blue Book investigated, they said, okay, we're going to close our doors too. And all of that happened because of these sightings here in Southeast Michigan. And so this is kind of a big deal in that it's been more than 50 years.
And one of the things,
yeah.
I'm sorry. One of the things too in the hearings is that they did acknowledge that they have a protocol and paperwork and all that other stuff to fill out for one of these encounters. So I mean, clearly they can't say it doesn't happen or anything like that because they've got a process when people have a report, or at least the military does.
And then
this is one of the things that they were tasked to do when this group was put together. So of course, I don't know how long it takes to put together the most basic form, circulate it, but this is one of the things that's part of their job. So of course they're going to say they have a form and promote the fact that they have a form, and it seems to be a chiefly internal form because if you watch, part of the discussion was, does this report form extend beyond the military into the civilian pilots witnessing things, for example, and when they were talking about like groups outside of the government and military investigating the phenomena, there was clearly a bit of disdain there, and I remember that the things got even ridiculous at one point. They were talking about possibly holding people legally liable for a UFO report that didn't pan out, and I don't know. There was
what are you gonna sue me because I said I saw something and you determined I didn't? I mean, that's kind of stupid.
Yeah, and I think they would have to prove intent, like you intended to fool them. Now, understandably, if they are going to float a report form out to the public, and the public is sending information directly to the government or the military, I guess maybe there'd be some level of liability. But I just, with 200 sightings a year in Michigan alone, my plate is full. What the government says, it doesn't really affect where I am and what I've seen and what I, have come to conclude myself. You don't need the government to tell you, what's real and not if you're living it.
And same thing, with all the ghost hunting stuff too. It's we're kind of crapped on by the scientific community. The straight science people, like they just it's when a guy comes up behind you and says something in your ear, I can't scientifically prove that. However, I know it happened, and that's it's a legit experience. So sometimes you're right. The official groups and branches, they just don't know it all. they act like they do, but they don't. So, Jerry, do you have more questions? Or actually, let me say this too. If anybody watching, if you guys have some questions, post them in the comments, and we'll be sure and get them up here. Jerry, it's up to you now.
No, I think we're
resident expert.
Yeah, we breezed
well,
through.
I do see,
Jerry,
I do see your diploma on the wall there, so you can't deny that you're an expert.
Yeah.
I want to believe.
Yep.
No, it's
well,
okay.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. So one other thing I know that they talk about a lot on some of the shows that I do listen to is, what's the reality of the U.S. government being in league with, aliens as far as technology goes, and obviously if China or Russia were in the same situation, they would probably be using that technology, So it's just one of those pseudoscience things, right? It's like you can assume that some of our technological advances could come from aliens, but odds are it's probably not the case, right? I mean, there's really no evidence that would say that we're using using technology that could be,
So are you saying that aliens may have invented the microwave?
the fax machine, maybe? But
no,
no.
I'm just kidding.
the closest First of all, I'll say there's a lot of people whose bread and butter is to delve into conspiracy theories when it comes to UFOs and the government. I had a much more basic grassroots humanistic approach of local people reporting their sightings and dealing with it from that angle. I'm not one of the big governmental guys, claiming the government this or claiming the government that. Sure, I'll criticize the open hearings because they're ridiculous,
Yeah.
but I'm not trying to find some sort of deep throat character or
Yeah.
whatever and find out more things. Though, having said that, an interesting story. This was about 30 years ago. My dad just said, and he knew that I've been into the UFO topic my whole life, and it just at some random moment he said, he goes, this guy I used to work with, he claimed that he was at that Area 51 and he saw flying saucers, and I'm like, do you think you can still get a hold of this guy? And he's like, oh no, that was many years ago.
Yeah.
And the guy had a fairly common name, like a Joe Smith style common name. And so I'm like, how come you never told me this before?
Yeah.
And you just suddenly just mention it. And
Right.
he's like, I don't know. And he kind of just shrugged it off. It didn't, why he chose that moment to tell me. I couldn't tell you, but that's probably about the close of a firsthand account.
Yeah.
My dad worked with some guy who told him that, but I don't know. I mean, clearly all this black budget money is going somewhere.
Yeah.
But and
it could be going to nothing related to what it's supposed to go to either. That's how that.
Yeah, who
In my
knows?
opinion, that's how that works. Kelly did have a question. How do you feel about ancient alien theories? And I don't even know what that is, so I'm going to back out.
Okay, so the idea that this is the 75th anniversary of Roswell and the Kenneth Arnold sighting. We are living in the modern era of UFOs, people like to call it. So sometimes people don't look back further than 75 years and just sort of focus on the modern UFO era. But you have to ask, well, okay, so if the universe is as old as it is, it's possible that there are some civilizations, spacefaring civilizations out there that are at least, a civilization that's just even hundreds of years ahead of us, could potentially be zipping around the entirety of the galaxy. And then, you think, it's possible some civilizations are even thousands of years more advanced than us, maybe even literally millions of years, it's
Right.
possible. And so if that's the case, is it not then possible that these beings from other worlds visited us thousands of years ago? And the mythologies and the religions and the cave paintings and the strange artifacts, these
Yep.
things the things that make you go,
Well, it's even mentioned in the Bible too. I think there's some alien
Mhm.
references or
Yeah, you could certainly read into it that's what's going on in some of these stories that happen there. And, really, why not? I mean, does it have to be the case that the UFOs showed up after World War II?
right.
If it's happening now, if it was happening 75 years ago, who's to say it wasn't happening much before
Yeah.
that? When you just see blatant UFOs painted in pictures,
Yeah. Yep.
from from a few hundred years ago to these strange things from many years prior to that. So, I I would say, why not?
Yeah. Yep.
It's possible.
Yeah. There's certainly evidence of it. So, Sue says I find it very. My eyesight sucks.
Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, go ahead. You read it.
I find it very interesting that many sightings. I grew up near Flint, Michigan, and do believe that when I was 13, my friends and I were out at night, and all of us believed that we saw a UFO. You have made me feel validated.
Yeah, so that's cool. That's like, in the paranormal world too. Like, I would say 30 years ago, if I told you I was a ghost hunter, most people would be like, "Oh my God, he's a weirdo." You know, is it the same with the, you know, like the UFO community? Like, I mean, is it becoming more accepted amongst the average person? Like, if you tell people that you're into UFOs and MUFON and all this stuff, I mean, they don't look at you like you're weird or anything anymore, do they?
No, no. Publicly, it's been fine. You know, I'm fully supported by relatives, friends, coworkers. You know, I've sort of always been sort of out about it. Usually, I don't start the conversation, but if somebody's curious to talk about it, I'll certainly discuss it with them. And so, yeah, I think it's very open. In fact, you know, at the college, I got a promotion once because
Okay.
of my experience working with MUFON. I had some things that I had done with MUFON that were key things that they were looking for, and they were like, "Oh, that's so cool!" And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I understand. You know, I just happen to be in a lane of life where I'm blessed to have that freedom to do that. Many people aren't, and so. For those who wish they could talk about what's happened to them or what they've seen and they can't, you know, certainly I feel, sorry for anybody in a situation like that. I'm just lucky enough to be able to do that.
Right. Yeah, that's cool. Yep. Jared, do you have anything else or
No, I'm
nothing else? Oh my God, you
I'm
guys.
tapped out as far as
Okay.
pre-prepared.
I'm gonna go into fringe. I'm gonna go into fringe UFO land here for a second.
Mhm.
This is something that I heard, and it was discussed as like a legitimate theory that like some of the Bigfoot sightings are tied into aliens. And okay, like don't laugh at me when I say this, but like some people believe that the Bigfoot is like a costume for aliens. Have you ever heard anything like that before, or am I just like?
Is this a Harold thing?
No, this is not a Harold thing. Like
I've
I've heard people
that
talk
before,
about this, that like it's almost like their spacesuit.
Huh.
Really?
You know,
Yes.
so I've certainly heard, you know, there are many instances of UFO and Bigfoot stories, you know, where Bigfoot was sighted around the time of a UFO sighting, right up to Bigfoot going in and out of a UFO. And, you know, I've heard theories that Bigfoot is some sort of creature that was either originally from Earth or brought from somewhere else to do menial tasks or to do whatever they do. Or maybe they just let them run out, you know, the way you let a dog out to go to the bathroom.
Mhm.
They do their business, they come back on a UFO, you know. But to say that the aliens are wearing Bigfoot costumes, I got to say that is a new one.
I'm not crazy here because Kelly's heard it too.
Hmm.
And Kelly is, you know, she's a friend of ours. She's a paranormal team too, and you know, she's more into the ghost stuff too, I think. But obviously, Bigfoots and aliens and all that stuff. You know, have you found that? I've heard a lot of like talk lately. You know, even on paranormal shows, like you know, ghost shows that like there's this big merge between like the UFOs and aliens and Bigfoot and ghosts, and you know what I mean. There's a big, almost like they all like, you know, if you have a circle of each, they all intersect at one point.
Yeah, a common term for that, and there's many ways to express it, but I like the term unified paranormal theory. And the way that it goes is something like this. So one theory about extraterrestrials, at least some of them, and I don't doubt this, is that their natural form isn't necessarily physical.
Right.
That they evolved to a point technologically where they learn how to pop their consciousness out and put it into another biological or technological or some sort of mix of a form. And so then, if their natural state becomes one of sort of spirit, if you will, then they exist naturally in a form of consciousness and only come into the physical when they need. And then with the theory of the, you know, and I can't speak across all Bigfoot sightings, but I am aware of those that I am not a Bigfoot guy. Not I I think Bigfoot exists, but it's not my field of study.
Right.
Though as it crosses into the UFO area, the things I hear about Bigfoot are ones where Bigfoot will suddenly appear or disappear or be around UFOs and do all these sort of mystical things,
Yeah.
and nobody can ever find a body of one of them.
Yep.
So there is a theory somewhat similar to the alien thing, where Bigfoot may also exist in that sort of form of consciousness, and then exist in a physical form
Right.
when there might be some need to do that. And then you look, ghosts are already there. That's their by nature. That's their thing, right? And so that if all of these phenomena exist in that sort of ether, in that sort of other dimensional consciousness form, then sure, you can mix and match parts, and strange things could happen that are combinations of all of these three things. Because if they all come from essentially the same place, then why not?
Has anybody ever claimed to have found an alien body or an ET body? Because I've seen pictures, and pictures can easily be fake, blah blah blah. But are there any legitimate claims to, okay, we've actually got a body here?
Well, there have been some. I mean, if you look at the Roswell testimonials, I'm not going to tell you that I know where you can go and look at one, but there was a case in Texas where they thought they had an alien, and they even had a funeral for it. This was many years ago. There was also, that you take the story like from Jackie Gleason when Richard Nixon showed up at his house and said, "Hey, you want to see aliens?" And so he took him to this place where, according to Jackie Gleason himself, Nixon showed him alien bodies.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's really even a shortage of stories where bodies are being held, someplace or another. But I can't show you a picture. I haven't seen a picture that I found convincing. And a lot of times whenever somebody says that they have a body, the story turns into such a ridiculous hoax that it really is a bad scene.
That was another thing that came up recently, and I don't think we talked about it yet, but that Mars rover thing that supposedly picked up like a built door on Mars. Is that credible, or have you seen that?
I've seen it, and I'm waiting to hear more on it. I very rarely get excited by something on the first blush. I wait and see what people who love to spend their time picking that apart, what they have to say about it before it catches more of my attention. There was that other Mars rover thing where it was clearly a technological sort of dome, but they said that was part of the craft itself, the rover, when it landed. And so that's explainable.
Right.
And the door, I saw the image. I'm like, okay, maybe. Let's see where this goes. And I haven't heard anything more about it that seemed to be in support. Nor, I gotta admit, have I heard anybody say, we used this sort of software on it, and look how fake this is. It might, and if somebody has, I haven't seen it.
So Kelly has a question too. Another one. Anything about the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base?
Yeah, Wright-Patterson, to go back to the Roswell story and bodies. So the bodies from Roswell, the alien bodies from the crash, from that story, from that account, were reportedly sent to Ohio, to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and kept there for at least some duration of time before the story that they were there became very popular. And the story is that they were since moved. I know an account of somebody, I don't know if you're familiar with John Tenney. He's got a great story about asking somebody about the bodies, and they said, "Oh no, we moved those out years ago." So maybe they were there.
Okay.
Mhm.
Let's see. Tramp. He says he's probably going to host an abductee group at the Secor building this year. So if anybody
Nice.
has any stories, Tramp, you got to keep us posted, I guess, on that, and like what you're going to do and exactly the details of the event, and we'll put it up. So I don't know, man. If nobody else has questions, like we try and keep it about an hour. Sometimes we go over. Sometimes it's. I just like I said, this is probably the most UFO education I've ever gotten in one night. Like I've always been intrigued by it, but I've just never. It's like you said, Bigfoot is not your thing. You know what I mean? It's I've got other stuff to do. So, what were you gonna say?
No, I said it is intriguing because
sure.
I'm like, so now I'm like, I want to go and look up things because it's like, okay.
Well, don't look up the congressional hearing.
No. But then also because I can't say how or why, but I've been told things, and it's like, oh, okay, and because.
We have a family member that can't talk.
Yeah.
I'll just say that.
Yeah. So it's it's interesting because they don't give us a lot of information, but they tell us just to kind of check this out, and so it's like, okay, so.
Yeah. So Adam had actually, like that. We got your name from Adam and all that stuff. He had an encounter. Did he actually fill out an official MUFON report?
He did.
Okay. Cool. What were the okay? Well, he's told it on his show, so we probably shouldn't even go there. Let's see. He says it's always intriguing. He saw some stuff last year. Yeah, we were just Adam. I wish I could like pull you in here and have you share your experience. That might be relevant to what we're talking about. Are you available? If so, just type yes in the comments, and I'll send you the invite. He's probably running to his camera right now. If we don't get Adam in here, though, I think we should probably wrap it up. And I do have to thank you.
So just if anybody's looking for a nice intro to UFOs book, I have a new favorite book that I'd like to recommend, which is called Grassroots UFOs by Dr. Michael Swords, who actually taught in Kalamazoo. So he was an instructor, a college professor, and so it's a phenomenal book. It has a lot of tight, easy to read UFO accounts, very nicely categorized, and it's a great overview of the phenomena. And I mean, even if you've been into the phenomena for years, this book is great. I'll say if anybody has seen a UFO, please go to MUFON.com to report it, even if it happened several years ago. We still look into it, and we'd still love to discuss it with you. If you're interested in investigating UFOs yourself, then of course MUFON's a place to do that. And we have details can be found at MUFON.com. We have a training program, and there's never a dull moment investigating UFOs.
Yeah, for sure.
And we have a state chapter. Michigan MUFON's website is MI for Michigan, MUFON.org, MIMUFON.org. And on there you can see details about upcoming meetings that we have. And you can even, join our mailing list to get notified of meetings and at least, have a ongoing discussion with other people who are also into the UFO field.
Well, Kelly's asking about your book, so she must have came in a little bit late. So go ahead and give the titles of your books again and the availability and like a real quick what they're about. I mean, we already heard it once, but do it again.
Sure. Thank you. So I have 2 books out currently about my personal stuff. I've also contributed to books like Weird Michigan and a handful of other books, but the 2 books that I wrote right there, Experiencer, Raised in Two Worlds, is my first book about roughly the first 20 years of my life growing up, encountering the UFO phenomena. And then my second book that was released on 11/11/2020 is about my experiences in my early 20s. There's more material. There's certainly another book to come out. So we'll see when that happens.
Yeah.
But they're they're all about my contact experiences and related phenomena. Both of them are wherever you find books. You could get it at Amazon, Walmart, Barnes and Noble, online. All of these are online. And one of the things that I very definitely specifically do in my books is I don't fill them with like unnecessary filler. You're not going to be reading a lot of stuff that is off topic. I don't know if I would go as far as to say it's a pet peeve of mine when I'm reading somebody else's
You're not trying
account.
to achieve a word count.
Yeah, I'm trying to get the message across tightly, and so that it makes sense. And
I think I'm definitely gonna buy that first one, just
thank you.
Check it out. And I price point, I think it was like $14.95 or something on Amazon. I think I saw. But
Yeah, it's not much.
Very reasonable. So everybody
And to our
go
book
buy it.
collection.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. Thanks for your time.
Yep, I
Very
appreciate you
knowledgeable
coming on.
and
Thanks.
learned a lot.
Yep.
Yeah, anytime I'm an easy target if some big UFO thing is going on and you want somebody to run their mouth about it, you can pull me on.
Yeah, no, you didn't run your mouth, man. Like I said, it was, very informative. I mean, I'm definitely.
It's piqued my interest.
Yep.
So
Yeah, I'm a UFO 101.
Mm-hmm.
So we appreciate you, man.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so very much.
We will talk again some other time. And I'm going to end this, and I'm always weird on how I end this. So we just click the button. So.